So today is World Radio Day, just like we have highlighted earlier on the show. And World Radio Day, this year's edition is radio and climate change. This has been on since 2011, as a matter of fact. And since then, there has been several topics. This year's is just basically trying to highlight how radio can be of help in disseminating information, promoting sustainable practices, and also engaging communities in climate-related matters. So today we have a radio manager and of course a veteran when it comes to broadcasting via radio, live with us in the studio, Barikumo Adou. Barry, good to have you. Good morning.
Good morning. I was wondering when you were saying some things, and I asked myself, since 2011, we've been celebrating World Radio Day. How come we're only talking about climate change now? Given the fact that everything we do depends on how we respond to the ecosystem, the environment. So how come we've not been factoring in the environment into what we do? But here we are. I am here. So Charles, I hope you're having a lovely day.
Yes, I am really. I mean, it's a profound question that you have actually asked. How come we haven't been really factoring in climate change in whatever it is that we do? Again, is it the people who should factor that in, or agencies who should be, knowledgeable enough to be able to disseminate information via the radio, not doing their job really?
I won't really say that, because given the situation, we've been talking about climate change for more than 20 years now. We've got into the controversy with the present President of the United States talking about that, disputing some of the data concerning climate change. Now, apart from last year, when the COP29 decided to focus more on climate change and decided that this year the theme should be radio and climate change, it does appear that it's not only an issue for the agencies, but it should have been something that would have made more impact, creating what you may call climate change champions that would lead the fight. And radio has always been there to carry information forward. As we are talking now, radio has been there. Radio precedes television.
Absolutely.
And it's one means of mass communication that has always been there. But the fact remains that it has not been used potentially to its fullest. Imagine in the rural areas, if you go up north in Nigeria, you discover that the easiest means of communication happens to be radio, but not down south.
Yeah.
So in the northern part, where you talk about desertification, wind effects, and all that coming from a after effect, or the effects of climate change, better put, you discover that with that, you can encourage people to grow more trees. You don't need to wait for a particular year to begin to talk about climate change. That's the whole essence. Now, if you get people in the north to plant more trees, if you need, it's necessary that you cut down one, you plant about 3 more. If you start that campaign in the north, begin to reclaim part of the desert, and you come down south, and just simply tell them that rather than over-cultivate land to expose this land, you can begin to do some form of shifting cultivation and ensure that you have trees growing, grasses flowing, grasses growing too, so that at the end of the day, you have a green vegetation, green belt zones scattered in different parts of Nigeria. We won't be talking about climate change. I give to the government that during the COP29, the president did say that we'll do some certain things. And I would have expected, because you mentioned the agencies, that the offshoot from that conversation at COP29 would have been Ministry of Environment, take up these aspects. We want to see the results within the next 1 year. Whatever ministry is, we all have an aspect of climate change affecting us as human beings. Is it from the food we eat? Is it the water we drink? Everything surrounding us has an aspect of climate change. How do we treat the ecosystem?
All right. What for you are the biggest challenges of radio stations reporting about climate change?
One of the biggest challenge, I would say, is that majority of the radio stations prefer to be in one language, English.
Mm.
And if you're going to talk about climate change and win over, or let me use the other word, convert people and convince them to understand the import, the impact, and how you can begin to influence change as an average Nigerian, we need to begin to speak the language of the area. For example, if you're in the southeast, Igbo. If you're in the north, Hausa. If you're in the south-south, whatever the dialect, whatever the language, is it Ibibio, is it Efik, is it Isha, whatever the language, is it Izon, that should be the medium of communication. Imagine trying to explain what climate change means to somebody in the local language. It will make more impact.
Yeah.
Because then you'll be given local examples.
Mm.
I remember when we had issues with erosion in Anambra State. The moment jingles began to saturate the airwaves on radio then, and people began to hear the word Mbuze, they knew that government is doing something close to their heart. Because when you talk about erosion on radio, the average man in the village is asking, what are they talking about? Well, when you begin to say Mbuze, they now know, my neighbor had that issue 2 days ago, and government is ready to tackle it. So that is not a challenge for radio. They just need to reprioritize and tone down that this fight against climate change must be more of localized tools, starting from a language. Speak the language the people can understand. You bring references that they can understand. Whatever tools you want to use to fight climate change, you must tone it down to the level the average Nigerian can understand so that they can join you to fight. If you just stay, let's say, in Abuja, and you are talking about climate change, in Enugu, for example, and you are telling us what to do, how we can impact the ecosystem by not, I'm going to use a word that's a bit big, by not engaging in mulching.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody is listening to the radio, he doesn't understand what you are saying because he cannot associate that word with a practice you are carrying out in the farm. You're not making any impact. You may be talking for years and for centuries, you won't make an impact. So it's time for radio to come down and to visit farms and to join hands with extension workers and the Ministry of Agric to begin to carry this practice down for people to understand that it's achievable.
So many persons have described climate change as the response, more like punishments by climate or by environment on man. Punishment in the sense that it is the way that mankind have treated their environment, and that's why the climate is reacting the way it is. Do you buy into that thought?
I won't buy into that because there's also this other theory that several thousands of years ago, that where is Antarctica now, where Antarctica is now, as ice cold as it wasn't that way centuries ago. So what did they do then that made the world turn around for the seasons to change? We need to ask that question. We need to have that conversation.
That's the reaction of man on the climate or on his environment that is making the climate react the way it's reacting? Because climate change is just basically the change of environment because of how mankind has treated the environment.
We're still trying to say the same thing, but not being on the same page. What do I mean? I asked a simple question, that Antarctica is a frozen area in the world today. But that from studies have shown that when you dig deep, you will discover that before those areas were covered by ice, some were deserts. The Sahara Desert you know today was filled with water. So was it what man did? Because you need to begin to ask yourself, from when we begin to say the ozone layer is depleting till now, how many years would have contributed to that? I want to join in a fight for climate change, but I want to have the right data. I want to know the right things to do, and not just begin to say that is the environment reacting to how we have treated it. Now, imagine this scenario. It's an estimate that you can't take to the bank. Let's say 80% of the world is saying climate change is impacting negatively on the world, causing rising water levels, causing flash floods, causing more hurricanes than usual, wild winds and all that. And the President of the United States is saying that it is time to drill more oil, not going green. So we need to begin to ask ourselves, do we have the same data? Are we looking at the same data? Are we analyzing the same data? Because the results we are getting are not the same. So what can we do that will put everybody on the same page? Now, also imagine this scenario. While they are telling us about climate change and telling us about going green, the depths of mines and the push to mine minerals that are rare, minerals they will use in creating technology, especially in Africa, has not stopped. It hasn't, not for one day. So, are we saying that climate change does not affect Africa?
I mean, it does in many ways. Last year, the rain just abruptly stopped. Normally, the rain will build right into sometimes November, but I think the rain stopped way into around October and in November. It was not the same the previous year. So there are variations of rainy season, dry season, the Hamatan, and so these are have been pointed out to become issues with our climate. The farmers cannot predict when the dry season starts and when it ends, and then it affects agricultural produce, and then it goes on and on and on. So one would wonder how radio can come in. How do you think that radio can engage young listeners in order to be engaged in treating the environment better?
I'll answer your question, but I'll just throw in something here. You are aware that in Dubai, they make rain to fall. I just want to give you some of those facts. Why? It's because, remember I said, until we're on the same page, seeing the same data, then we'll understand how to push forward. But now, how can we use radio to better engage the people? I said it earlier. You must localize the information. If radio localizes the information, it becomes easier to get people to
These days, young people don't like even speaking their language. What the Gen Zs want to be told what's going on social media and what the trends are all about. And
even
so
in trending.
I'm wondering if you're using language to speak to Gen Zs these days, are you not going to lose them?
No. There's a word you use, and that's the operative language. The Gen Zs are their own language. So if you communicate with them, to them, in that language, they will understand. You have localized it. So, for example, you are trying to tell them that by discarding waste from technology irresponsibly is also going to cause toxic effect to that landmass. And if you tell them in the language they understand, they would understand you, and they will begin to become champions of the ecosystem and the environment. It starts by convincing people to join you. Local language does not just mean Igbo. Localizing doesn't mean only Igbo terminologies and that. Localizing means knowing who you want to communicate with, doing a research to be sure that the method of communication is the one that is most appropriate. And you go ahead and do that. And you will discover that by the time you measure, your milestones are all achievable.
How much of collaborations do you think are needed between radios and maybe the agencies? I'm talking about NIMED right now, in making sure that people in some way react to the environment. The reason why I'm saying that is because every now and then we see NIMED mention and announces periods of winds, periods of rains, that people should expect that. And sometimes it doesn't really trickle down. How much of collaborations do you think that radio should have with NIMET and other agencies that are into, in the environment?
I would love to reverse that. I'll reverse it and say, how much collaborations should NIMET and these agencies have with radio? Radio is a means of getting to the public. Even the announcement by NIMET, if they make that announcement in their office, and it's not online, it's not on radio, it's not on television, it stays in their office. So they are the one who needs to initiate that collaboration. Why do they need it? If you are telling me today there'll be a windstorm in Enugu, and you are in your office, you didn't get that message across to the media, that information is not only lost, but what you want to prevent will still happen. So it's time for NIMET to begin to ask, how far can we go in terms of collaborations? We do weather reports on Signature TV. NIMET should be the ones feeding us, and stations should not be charged for things like that. Because if you give the accurate weather, let me just go a bit. In UK, they will tell you that if you don't watch or listen to the weather report, you're taking a risk stepping out, because the weather is unpredictable, but yet they predict it. So NIMET should begin to find better ways of collaborating, not just NIMET, with the other agencies, of collaborating with the media, whether it's radio, whether it's TV, whether it's online, to ensure that their messages get down to the public that needs to know. You remember, the last one was given by the Minister of Aviation.
Yeah. Festus Keyamo.
Yes. And it just gave broad-based, there'll be rain, late rain, early rain, and all that. And there was something funny about it, because they were now saying you now meet NIMET to get. Why would that be? Why should that be? If we say that Nigeria belongs to all of us, then they should give us timely information. Imagine the flooding last year. By the time you got wind that a dam had broke, we had the controversy of, yes, it had broken, no, it hasn't burst, and all that. And so people got swept away. Should that be? No. The first place to go, yes, I agree. You want to control the information that people get. That appears normal. But when disaster strikes, you first take care of the safety of the people before thinking about controlling the information. Many people lost their lives in Borno when the dam burst last year. It was terrible. You remember the Lado Dam. Now, the annual dam that you hear, the Cameroonians open the dam and all that. And the question I keep asking is, this thing happens every year. Every year, the Nigerian government or the agencies in charge know that the Cameroonians will not want their own cities to overflow with water, and they will definitely open this dam. Are we ever prepared? No. Is NIMET going to cooperate better with the media to ensure that we get timely information? If I tell you I'm not sure, you think I'm joking. Because they've started the year not giving us all the information we need. They'll prefer you going to their website for them to get clicks rather than opening information. Remember, no matter the agency you work for, you have one duty, and that duty is to ensure that lives and property are saved. That is the basic essence of our living today.
We have even a very big problem is in our hands right now, given the situation that we're having in America. The new president has just been inaugurated, the person of Donald Trump, and we know what his stance is when it comes to climate change. He practically doesn't believe in it, and all of the agencies that are saddled with the responsibility of checking those issues are, he put people who have his own belief, on that matter. And U.S. is a strategic country when it comes to, climate change. When a country like U.S. pulls out from these types of arrangements, it tends to, the impact in terms of collaborations across board tends to suffer. How much of a threat do you think Donald Trump is to today's climate?
I don't think it's a threat to today's climate. You know why I said that? We go back to what I just said about Nigeria not being prepared. You know that every year we have Cameroon releasing water from the dam. Let's be honest with ourselves. By the time Donald Trump became the standard bearer for the Republicans, we all knew that what he did in his first tenure would happen. First tenure, he removed America from the Paris Agreement, and that is talking about the environment. So we should be asking the world, were they prepared for the coming of Donald Trump? If you listen to the news, you will hear the European Union saying they are ready in terms of the tariff wars. But the bigger question is this. You want to engage in tariff war? Let me ask you, Charles. Is Africa ready to benefit from the tariff war that's happening all over the world? There's going to be a tariff war between the US and China, US and Mexico, US and Canada, US and Europe. Where are we in Africa? Are we ready to benefit from it? We are not. Have we ever positioned ourselves in Nigeria to be the ones to supply oil? Because by the time Donald Trump begins to drill new oil fields, it means the price of oil will drop. Are we ready to supply? Are we ready to be part of the war? Rather than looking at Donald Trump as a threat to climate change, we should be looking at the opportunities available. Look, when Donald Trump decided to cut aid to South Africa, what did South Africa do? It stopped American businesses from operating. Bros, no vex. Can Nigeria do that?
Well, yeah, we can, but...
Because I want Africa to begin to take charge. Why did I say that? The minerals, there's war in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Because of what? Because of the minerals there. There are illegal minings going on in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And in several other parts of Africa. Who are the beneficiaries? The developed countries. So why are we seeing them as a threat when in truth, maybe this theory is not the best? All the developed worlds are a threat to the developing world. we should begin to organize ourselves to be the beneficiaries of their trade wars and their bans and whatever they are doing. But have we positioned ourselves? Can we confidently say that if today we are given the right to mine gold and sell at our own price? You know the price of gold has gone up.
Yeah.
And you also know that in Nigeria we mine gold.
Yeah.
But have you ever asked yourself how much comes into the federal government coffers from gold? So we are the threats. Donald Trump is not. Until we get our acts right, then we can all stand and tell Donald Trump, go ahead, we're waiting.
Well, getting our acts right is one big issue that I'm sure that African leaders don't even have. I'm hoping that somebody actually take the bull by the horn and do these things, making sure that they take their own future into their own hands, basically. Barikumo Adou is a veteran broadcaster and a radio manager, giving us an insight into the climate change as it affects radio broadcasting. Good to have you, sir. Thank you for coming.
Good to have you, Charles.
My pleasure.
You have a lovely day. Thank you.
Signature TV. News in your pocket.